So hi, welcome back to Information Security Management. My name is Tim Stuchtey and I'm your professor in this module. Today we are doing another podcast at the end of this lecture in Information Security Management, where we want to look a little more into the future. What's next? What's on the horizon? How is information security management going to change in the foreseeable future? For that, I have invited a friend and partner, Stefan Taing. Stefan, thank you for doing this with me and welcome. Not in the studio, but you are sitting in Munich, and it becomes clear why you are doing so in a second. Stefan has a PhD from the University of Munich, the Ludwig Maximilians University. You studied business and computer science in Vienna, Birmingham, and Taipei. And you are the co-founder and CEO of Munich Innovation Labs, which is why you are located in Munich. And it was just simply easier to do this digitally, even though I would have loved to invite you to Prussia, to the heart of Prussia, to Potsdam. But anyway, at Munich Innovation Labs, you guys are developing and of course also selling AI-supported software solutions for law enforcement, the intelligence agencies, and the defense sector, offering expertise in areas such as big data, machine learning, especially in regulated industries. So once again, welcome, Stefan. And maybe as a starter, maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on what it is that you are doing at Munich Innovation Labs. I guess the name already tells us that you are a perfect fit for us to look a little bit in the future because you are dealing with innovations. So, Stefan, what is it that you are doing?
Tim, it's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. And it's also a pleasure that over the last couple of years, we've been in touch, especially regarding how do we ensure that, public institutions, private sector organizations, NGOs, basically the entire society deals with how can we ensure that we use AI in a responsible way to enhance capabilities, for threat intelligence, information processing, but on the other side, also making sure that, regulation should be seen as a guiding principle that enables us to securely use AI for, certain positive aspects, but at the same time also forces us to think about how can we use this new technical capability in a way that is, of course, compliant with laws, that's for sure, but also, pushes the boundaries of how technology can be deployed. And this is what we are basically doing at Munich Innovation Labs. We are partnering with our customers, but also providing them with a software tool, a software framework that is called Inspector, that enables them to process data in the areas they need. That is especially open source intelligence. So you want to have a situational awareness of certain things, but also situational awareness when we are combining not only the cyber domain, but also real world examples. For example, just last year we supported local authorities in securing the European Championships here in Munich during the opening games and the local games. So I'm really excited to, share some insights on what we are doing with our partners, but also hopefully give you some, aspects about how we see jointly we must push forward the boundaries of how can we implement, responsible, trustworthy IT security systems.
Perfect. And you've mentioned artificial intelligence several times, and that's the field of your expertise. So let's stick to that for a moment. And maybe you can give us a little bit of an idea in this world where, you know, every 6 months or so, a new generation of artificial intelligence is published. The dynamics in this field are enormous. Is it possible to look forward how we can use AI in things like threat detection and incident response within enterprise security operations centers in the, let's say, foreseeable future? So the next, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years. Can we look into the future this far when it comes to AI?
I will try to give you my opinion. Certainly, there's a big disclaimer. I cannot see into the future. But I think when we step back a little bit, there are certain dynamics that are that can help us to predict certain trends, and then, of course, then to understand what measures should be taken. I would like to take a step back here, because in the end, you know, of course, you are absolutely right. We're facing a dynamic situation. So basically, almost every week, there's a feeling that something of a breakthrough is being published in that domain. But when we step back a little bit, I think one thing is for clear. You know, we're dealing with an acceleration of innovation. That means that technical capabilities are out there. The maturity of the technology is a different thing, but at least you get the impression that, you know, if you want, every month you could basically upgrade your organizational skills, let's put it this way, in a significant way. That's the one part. The other part, we should always, you know, think about what is the actual mission that our partners, the users, the organization want to achieve. And then we have to make sure that, you know, we match that together, because certainly the core issue is how do we make sure that certain objectives are being achieved. For example, our partners and customers, what is the actual mission? So for example, threat intelligence, you would like to ensure that, you know, threats, however they are being defined, are being detected. Objective of your organization, whether it's a public institution or a private organization, needs to, you know, be aligned with the technical capabilities. And when we step back from the dynamics of the current situation, I think there's one thing for clear: the dynamic will accelerate. Your mission, your organization's objectives stay rather the same, right? So these are more of the stable conditions. So when you try to align that, one thing is for clear: you need an innovation framework that is able to properly assess, test, pilot, and then, of course, operationalize these new capabilities. I mean, that will stay the same. Maybe the speed of how you test, assess, and then integrate it in your organization is accelerating. These are the base conditions that will stay. I think the main challenge is how to adapt to it. Nowadays, when, you know, in the past you had maybe a years of time of you know, taking a look at a new AI model, evaluating it, you know, testing it, and then finally operationalize it. Nowadays, we're talking about a much more accelerated speed and also a different structure. But I think you can adapt to it, but also as an organization, you should think about, first of all, how do I adapt it? And secondly, does it really make sense to innovate all the time? Or how do you combine, you know, a stable system with the innovation speed that is out there? I think that's the main challenge, but the main challenge has not changed, because this was always the case. The dynamic, of course, and the structure needs to be adjusted, especially when we're thinking about, you know, security, public safety. Certainly, people and society or your customers are unwilling to accept long and tedious innovation cycles. And I think that needs to be adapted, and that is also the main challenge for all stakeholders involved.
And if I may ask you here, I mean, your customers are usually from the public sector, law enforcement, as I said, the military. Let's put it mildly, they are not known for being overly dynamic when it comes to innovation circles. I mean, maybe the most extreme part, in the military, they talk about a midlife upgrade with a Leopard 2 tank after 20 years of service, to give it another 10, 15 years of lifeline. So with your specific stakeholder or customer group, how do you teach them or make them aware that they need to speed up when it comes to the innovation circles, especially and mostly in the digital sphere?
So my personal experience is that, yes, our customers, I mean, being mostly, public institutions or having, mission critical objectives, of course, they cannot be as agile, as innovative as a young startup. That's for sure, but that's also not their objective, right? And we were very fortunate to be in touch with certain elements of these organizations that are very well adjusted and open to innovation. Let me give you those examples. First of all, as I mentioned before, the organizations or the public institutions' objective hasn't changed. While you need to ensure, for example, that law is being followed, regardless of the domain, whether it's in real life or in cyberspace. And this hasn't changed, but certainly the challenges have grown or are more dynamic. So in order for them to use innovation, I mean, they don't want to use innovation because it's cool or, you can sit on a panel and talk about it, but because they are trying to achieve their mission. So we were very fortunate that we were in touch, in close contact with innovative, I would say, people who have an innovative mindset, but also people from a unit that, basically have as a mission how to integrate, how to work with those innovative aspects from the outside. So there is a way to test, explore this. And the other challenge, of course, is then how do we get those innovations into real life practice, like operationalize them, roll them out so that every user can use it. And that is the challenge, but I don't think that when you take it seriously and you understand this as a life cycle or a process, that this is particularly challenging. Maybe you could wish for can the speed be faster? Of course, yes, but we're talking about mission critical systems or larger organizations, so you wouldn't expect them to have releases every week. Leopard is not my expertise, but let's put other defense systems there. I think the challenge for the entire industry and over different countries is how do you ensure that there's a rigorous testing, how there's a rigorous, understanding of what are the capabilities, and then how to integrate them into legacy system. And this is the key part. Legacy systems. Certain organizations, when they are being, when you want to try to integrate innovative aspects into their legacy systems, then that's the challenging part. I mean, it's always easier to set up something completely new, greenfield approach. You basically can do those, jumping over certain technology cycles. But with established organizations and systems, that's more challenging. And our personal approach, approach as an organization was always to really take this into consideration that certain parts will never change. For example, information security or systems that, have a strong or high requirement when it comes to information security because you're dealing with sensitive data. they are just here to stay. So when you bring in new innovative aspects or capabilities, you need to understand that either you try to change the entire framework, which is pretty challenging, or you say, well, what are the innovative parts? For example, how do I upgrade the sensing capabilities into a legacy system? And then understand that you're not, disrupting it in a sense that get rid of the old system and the new system comes in, but how can we, fit into this ecosystem? And that, I think, is just a practical way of making sure that there's an evolution, because most of our partners and customers basically are trying to evolve the system and capabilities rather than revolutionize everything. This is our approach, how we can, jointly do this.
All right. Well, since you already mentioned revolutionizing systems, at the top of public institutions, there are some world leaders who make our world much more dynamic. Some of the certainties of the past are gone. War in continental Europe is possible, seems to be possible, or obviously is possible again. The friendship and the military support from the United States is in question. So, you've studied in Taipei, you are more than aware of the tensions between the People's Republic of China and Taiwan, and everything going on in the South China Sea. So my question is, all this geopolitical dynamics, when it comes to information security, does that have an impact, or can we just, listen to Tim's lecture and do business as usual, or do we need to adapt because of the big guys seemingly being a little crazy at the moment?
I think it's a very important aspect of it. I think, we are very well aware of the critical issue of, let's say, the supply chain and the sourcing of raw materials for mission critical systems. You should think about exactly this mindset, or with this approach, about the digital ecosystem as well. Where does the data come from? Who owns the data? What, different steps in order to transform data into insights are required? And when we take a look at the entire system, which steps are basically in your hand, or where do you have a black box that you don't really control? I think it's pretty much the same. And I think the risk was always there. Maybe the risk has increased now that there are geopolitical tensions. Certainly, I do think so. There's a much more, there's an increased awareness because of that, because certain parts of it are no longer a commodity, but are a critical, let's say, aspect of the entire value chain. Let me start with the data. The data, there's, I've heard this saying many, many times, data is the new oil. I don't quite agree with it, because, it's not the new oil, but you need to own the refining capabilities. Of course, you need the data. Data is abundance, but you also need the right data, the relevant data, or the mission critical data. So that's one part. The second part then is this value chain, either it be foundational models or processing, real chip, semiconductor capabilities, or the capabilities to produce those critical components, the entire supply chain. They need to be, evaluated, considered, and there should be a conscious decision about. I personally don't think that complete sovereignty is really an option, because every modern complex system has some interdependencies. The key part is, where do you accept that you are dependent, and where do you want to build up capabilities that you could be, for example, you could double source or source with others. I think that's the main challenge here.
But let me challenge you here a little bit. So, I mean, given your line of expertise in the field in which you work at Munich Innovation Labs, weren't you a little, I don't know, mad, or did you have a bad day when you heard that German law enforcement is using Palantir systems to work with the police data or law enforcement data in Germany and to use their systems, obviously for critical data instead of, I don't know, your solutions or solutions from European companies? Or is that a field where you say, look, the Americans are so far ahead, so that is a field where I say we cannot be completely sovereign in this field and need the technology from abroad?
So my personal view is that, in order for the law enforcement officers to achieve their goal, to do their job, they need a lot of systems. And in certain units, they apparently use Palantir, which is perfectly fine, but they are not using Palantir exclusively all day long, because they have a multitude of different systems they need to work with. So I would not say, first of all, I wasn't, so when I heard, it's not that I woke up and I read about this story and I have a bad day, not at all. So this is of course, an ongoing process. And I personally think, you need the certain capabilities, and who is the vendor to deliver it is a completely different question. And, there are certain requirements, that as a society, you demand that certain things are being done, right, being secured. And then you have the law enforcement officers who need certain tools to do so. And I think that needs to be matched. Just as there are different models of cars being used by law enforcement officers to drive around to do their job, there are certain IT tools there. And again, I'm stressing the part of it. There are many, many tools not out there, but also in operation, that are just required to do the job. And therefore, we more think about a ecosystem, and then again, it's about the process, and then about you need to do a conscious decision, and many times it's about speed, what is readily available, where do you want to build up capabilities, and certain things. Is it a very basic make or buy decision? So I'm not into politics, and I definitely think there is plenty of challenges and opportunities out there. Yeah.
Speaking about ecosystems, when it comes to research, many of us are, let's say, neither you nor I can build a competitive, let's say, Palantir system in Munich or in Berlin, Potsdam. So there's a big research ecosystem, especially in the field of digitalization, but also cybersecurity, IT security, both in where you are in Munich, but also where we are here in the Berlin-Potsdam area. The Horizon Europe, the European Union, is playing a big role with its research framework. How do you see that evolve? Is that are we fit for purpose in order to develop the next generation of, be it AI or anything else digitally, in order to keep up with the Chinese and the Americans in this field? Or have we fallen too far behind and we can only just learn from what the Chinese and Americans are doing?
So I was very fortunate to not only work, but also experience like the entire ecosystem when it comes to, innovation labs, and also how to basically, how can we transfer innovations into real life, capabilities in different organizations. And I think, especially when you mentioned, Munich or Berlin or certain other ecosystems, I think there's world-class expertise here. There's world-class innovation here. There are world-class institutions here. The challenge is always the entire ecosystem aspect. So in order to have a fruitful ecosystem, not only do you need world-class people and institutions and results, but you also need the organizations that consume it. So that's one part of it. And certainly, that's also my experience. There are organizational cultures that are more open to innovation and organizational cultures that are more skeptical of innovation. And, this plays into the entire ecosystem of, are we willing to accept 80% solutions in order to experiment with it? Or is your approach that everything needs to be 100% secure, even though it's an illusion, in order to work with it? I think that's one aspect of it, the experimentation and willingness. But on the other side, also, again, I think all aspects are here. But if it's only from the demand side or the supply side, it doesn't help. If it's only from the demand side, it also doesn't help. So it really needs to be a closed ecosystem. And to answer your question, I think the ecosystem is world class. Can it be improved? Yes. But there's definitely, I would say, if you ask me about a wish, I would say more openness for innovative aspects, not only in testing and experimenting with it, but also then integrating into larger systems. That's certainly an area of improvement. But all the components are there. And, it's always that certain ecosystems in other regions could be a way ahead. I mean, when we take a step back, not only 25 years ago, in certain technology areas like solar system or telecommunications, I mean, this ecosystem here was at the cutting edge. Maybe it's not the case anymore, but it doesn't mean that you can just jump to the next. I think it's competition is a good thing, and sometimes in a competition you are at the forefront. Sometimes somebody takes over, but then you have the nice situation. Then as a follower, you can basically accelerate speed again. So I would say not everything is lost. Not at all. There are good foundations here.
Perfect. So there's hope. That's
not a hope, but I think hope needs to compared with a...
Hope is not a strategy, so it needs to be combined. Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. So one final question. Maybe help me a little bit to look into the future of information security. What new strategic approaches should organizations adopt to balance the drive for innovation, what we talked about before, but also against the increased, let's say, regulatory scrutiny with ever more regulation coming up in information security? So what's in the future for companies in this field?
I think you should really focus on the governing framework, how to integrate innovation, how to also assess the impact of it. And then, of course, you always need to balance, innovation and of course, IT security. They are not mutually exclusive, meaning that you can have both, certainly, but you need to do a conscious decision. I mean, it really depends on your industry, right? You should take into consideration that when it comes to information security, you need to balance it. I mean, do new technologies, innovative capabilities have a major impact on the outcomes, make your services more profitable? Maybe you can increase efficiency, and then you need to balance it. I would say currently we are at the very exciting times that many functions or capabilities can be rethought in a positive way. So certain things can be automated, certain things can be done in a very efficient way. You should always think about IT security not as a side notice in the sense, okay, this is really great, and how can we make it sure, safe? But basically combine it. I mean, we want this, but we want it in a safe way. What are the trade-offs so that it's not a either or? And this is really important. I think thinking also about those geopolitical tensions, you also need to think about maybe double sourcing and making sure that certain capabilities are within your own organization domain, and again, really revisit what can be outsourced in a good way, or what needs to be outsourced, but then maybe you build up your own capabilities in order to back it up if these outsourcing strategies provide a risk or are basically not available anymore. I think, again, revisiting the entire framework of what needs to be done internally, what needs to be included from the outside, and then to really revisit again risk versus potential. I think currently with the ongoing dynamics, that needs to be a much more frequent iteration. Maybe in the past it was, okay, you have a security concept and it will hold up a couple of years. Maybe nowadays you need to revisit it in a more shortly manner.
Thank you, Stefan. I have the feeling we need to revisit you in a shorter period of time in order to hear from you again and your ideas about how the world of information security is changing. Thank you for taking the time, and good luck, and hopefully you and I see each other in person in the very near future. Thank you, Stefan.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, Tim.